Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
What's up, brother? Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
I mean, I'm glad it's over. It gets you get to an age, it gets a little like, and maybe some of these other folks will understand it. It's like everybody's got work, and then you got older kids, and they just really, honestly, mostly want money. Like I I got my
Money,
son some good gifts.
money is a
Like,
very economically efficient gift.
yeah,
You know, you
man.
can do what you want with it.
The money is, but like you've got the little guy, right? Who's like,
Yeah.
you know, what's in this paper? Like, and then first you
Yeah,
got
no, he's like we had to reteach, like he sort of gets like opening gifts now, but we had to reteach him, like opening up. Oh yeah, like this idea. Okay, we're gonna pull like a tow truck. Shame. Okay, let's pull.
yeah,
And but he's able to rip it open, and then as soon as he got to like some of the trucks, though, he didn't want to do anything else. He was just like, I want to play with my excavator, and why would I want to open anything else? It's fine. Let's just play with
right,
this.
right. That's it. Once they get something they want to play with, it's like, and then they'll get tired too, right? Did he get grumpy towards the afternoon or wore out?
Yeah, a little bit. It's in the middle of that and going on a hike and potty training. He ended up just like passing out on the couch like an hour after his like target nap time. So
Yeah, me too. that
yeah,
that comes back around once you get to be my age.
mhm.
You take naps.
Goes full circle.
Hmm.
Um, but so anyway, folks, for the title of this show was "Solutions to Make 2024 More Free." Um, we're gonna jump into like just a solutions based episode, um, for the entire radio portion. We might get to some current events in the bonus time after the main show, just the podcast portion of the show. But for this part, we're gonna talk about solutions. It's gonna be a policy oriented show. Feel like there's good opportunity to talk about things that could happen in 2024. We're gonna cover some stuff that's like realistic, as in like this could happen if Democrats like in Republicans had a conscience for just a minute, and then we'll talk about some of the maybe the stretch goals too,
Yeah,
because we have to have both of those.
absolutely.
And we'll try to get to as many as possible. All right,
Yeah,
so we're gonna jump into the show in about 15 seconds. If you think of anything, leave your comments. We're actually gonna start out with a comment.
we are. It's a banger of a comment. It
Yeah,
really is. It
Patricia on
really is.
YouTube, we're gonna start the show out with your two comments. All right, we're gonna be going in 3, 2, 1.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson for today, joined by Tim the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and look, this is our an evergreen show. We're going to be talking about real, you know, solutions, ideas that we think could bring the world together, right? Under
That's right.
under the auspices of a freer society of real reform for our society, that libertarian oriented kind of concepts, and I think it's very exciting. I'm kind of excited, but you know what? We have a banger of a question out there, Kevin, an absolute banger. Our friend Patricia in YouTube world asks us, even before the show, what is each of your definitions of freedom? What is it? How do you define it? It's got to be a
Yeah.
platitude, right?
That's great. And again, this isn't part of the show plan either. We're like, this is thank you, Patricia, for jumping in with this question, because it is a good thing to start out with. How do you define freedom? Because a lot of folks will kind of define freedom as like whatever they think feels good, right? Like a freedom, it's a good thing. It's freedom is that means that like get all your money, right? Like that's freedom. To me, I define freedom in a very negative sense, as in like freedom is like not having the restrictions and coercions of the state or other threats of violence to be able to act freely, and to do so, to be able to act in the manner that you choose, as long as you're not hurting people or taking their stuff. And that's a little bit of the Matt Kibbe thing, is don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. But I think that's an important caveat. You should be able to do whatever you want without threats, coercion, or violence acted upon you, as long as you're not hurting other people or taking their stuff.
So if we want to keep it in the vein of freedom from things, or I'm with you on the don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. But what I want freedom from is divisive identity politics. I want to be free to interact with my neighbor without them thinking that I'm out to get them. I want to be able to, without government coercion backing things up, without crazy, and we'll get into zoning, because I think there's a solution in our state for a real solution that would make things better for everyone. But I want people to be free to be themselves. I want them free to be cool, and I want them free from manipulations that the government offers. And also, Kevin, my income taxes and my property taxes, that is not freedom. I want lower taxes, Kevin. Like, that's.
Do you not have the freedom to pay your taxes? Aren't they voluntary, Tim?
What? Like, they're not voluntary, right?
Yeah.
Like, if I come up with a scam to not pay my income taxes, I'm going to jail, man. Like, that's a reality.
No, that's definitely part of it, right? Like, it's you are not able to do what you want with your own money, because the government, under the threat of violence, will, take you and throw you in a cage if you don't give them their cut. That's part of it, right?
And you still owe them when you get out.
Like, yeah.
You don't get to pay off that debt by serving time in jail. You have to still owe them and get punished. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. So, and then you also kind of define it in a cultural sense, as in, like, you think there are cultural values that are important for freedom to be able to thrive, right? So that interaction with your neighbor, that's how that's my interpretation of what you want to see as well. Like, the interaction with your neighbor, that, like, not being divided by identity politics, like the social equality, not economic equality, but social equality necessary for everyone to be seen as, in kind of a blank slate type of way, in an equal type of way, not economically, but just we're all equal before each other and before the law. And that's an important part of a functioning civil society where you have freedom and liberty.
Yeah. So I think that we did our best to answer it. I don't feel like my answer actually met up with my concept of, like, I rail against the lack of freedom that the government is imposing on us. I rail against identity politics. I rail against taxation. So if we could boil it down and distill it, I think don't hurt people and don't take their stuff is a pretty good definition of freedom. If we could do that more as a society, we'd be stepping on into the direction of freedom.
Yeah, and again, I saw that from, like, a Matt Kibbe thing. I don't know if he was the first one to do it, but I really like that answer. Like, that's how we should do most things and structure our laws. To the extent government should exist at all, is like, you should be able to do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting people or taking their stuff. That's the thing. You don't get to violate someone else's liberty to pursue your own. And so, if we could structure a society around that, would be pretty good.
Yeah, I wish I had a pithier kind of platitudinous answer, but when it comes right down to it, we regularly rail against the loss of freedom and the abridgment of freedom, and if we could have more economic freedom, that'd be a nice step for everybody.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know there's, without diving too much in the philosophical side of it, there's folks who are, like, consequentialists, and, like, and then there are folks who believe in, like, the principle of freedom, right? And there's a lot of overlap there. I believe in both. Like, we should have freedom for its own sake, but also the consequences of freedom are more wealth, more prosperity, more happiness overall too. So that's
Look, more freedom to do whatever it is you want to do would benefit our economy. And so that,
Yeah.
if we're kind of exhausting this subject, it kind of takes us into our next subject of, I'm a big fan, and you and I have talked about it, of realizing that zoning and its problems, even on a local level, plays into everything. It plays into identity politics. It plays into limiting your neighbor's opportunities. It plays into the homelessness equation. It does so many, it supports big business. Like zoning does so many things that it takes small business out of your neighborhood. It does so many things that if we could lighten up on zoning and relax and enter into voluntary agreements with our neighbors about, you know, look, one of the things that's always bothered me is that, yeah.
Okay, I want to back up a little bit because we've jumped into like the specific things now, right?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, I didn't introduce that very well.
Yeah, so we've had a transition. We're going into like, here are the specific policy things. Here are the things we are advocating for that, and we've picked a few. Like I've picked several that I think are like tangible, realistic goals that can happen in 2024. We're going to talk about like maybe some stretch goals, some things that are going to be a bit further, some like libertarian pillars that are out there. But the core of all of these is that in that theme where we defined like what freedom is letting people do their own thing, right? And letting people do their own thing without piling on as many government restrictions into that process benefits everyone, not just, we're talking about zoning, not just the developers, right? Everyone's like, oh, the use one enriched development. No, this benefits everyone. So to that end, here's how like freedom makes your life better, your neighbor's life better, our entire country's lives better. And so we're going to talk about zoning, and that's part of what that is. Zoning is, how about at the very high level, how about we just make it easier for people to be able to build the stuff that they want to build, right? That's because zoning restricts your ability to do that. It restricts your ability to build an apartment. It restricts your ability to be able to have a business in a neighborhood. It restricts your ability to be able to create the home that you want, to create the neighborhood that you want. And so Tim, go ahead. I sort of cut you off, but I wanted to make sure we had that transition in there.
You're so much better at this stuff than I am. You're so well organized, and it was great that you reeled me back. So where I was going to go is that, like, we have restrictive zoning in our area where, when I was a kid, there were local garages where guys were working on cars, and they did their best to keep it neat. But you could contract with your neighbor to get your car fixed, and those guys would drop anything to get you back on the road because you were their neighbor. And they would employ kids to help clean up the shop. They would teach kids mechanics. It was like a way to apprenticeship. And yeah, sometimes you didn't make a lot of money. But the issue was that we had neighborhood garages that have been zoned out of existence. Yet we have doctors that occasionally can have an office in their place. But we took a hard stance against certain types of business, even little machine shops, things that would fit well in a neighborhood are no longer available because some obligation of things that I don't understand, Kevin. Like, I don't understand why we wouldn't want a mechanic in our neighborhood. I don't understand why we wouldn't want a small machine shop in our neighborhood. And I don't understand why we would zone against things like that. The things that give our neighbors opportunity, things that keep our kids busy, things that when a guy is going to be there for you when you're having car trouble, why did we zone our way out of that stuff? Like, why did we take that freedom away?
Yeah, I mean, and it's partly just like we wanted to separate stuff. Okay, what if those shops end up being like a nuisance, right? Like, it doesn't even have to be, like, just theoretically, people might think that those places are annoying. Oh, we want this to be a bedroom community. We want it to be quiet. We don't want other stuff around. Okay, so now we have to spread stuff out, and people can't take advantage of having, businesses like close to them, close to their neighbors, where like they need them most. And it's funny. Like, this is a thing that like my neighborhood still sees parts of. Like, there's like like vacuum cleaner repair places in my neighborhood still like would be difficult for them to pop up. But there's also like a garage in my neighborhood that, like, it's very obviously a garage, but because it hadn't been a garage in a while, it got rezoned to like R1, which means that it can only be for residential use. But it's a garage. Like, it's very obviously a garage. Someone like fixed it up and they tried to start a new business with it, and they must have like run into some trouble there too. But it's
Of course,
obviously a garage, and
yeah,
so
the
and so,
government.
like, there is a policy that could legalize, like, some people have talked about things called ADUs, accessory dwelling units, where you're able to build apartments or like, other smaller like housing units on your property. But there's also like accessory commercial units that you could put on, right? So
Yeah,
that's the garages. Like, so those used to be legal, where you would be able to add a garage onto your house. Again, you can't dump your oil in the street or anything like that. That's fair. You can't,
yeah, that's
pollute the
fair.
street, but you should be able to operate a business, because that also saves people money, because homeowners might be able to afford to add the shed to be able to operate like a legal business out of their house, but they might not be able to afford a commercial property elsewhere to be able to like run that business. And so
Yeah,
this is destroying opportunities for small business owners, for entrepreneurs to be able to succeed. And for the neighbors, especially, you think of like low income neighborhoods where this type of thing, well, to be frank, it does happen when the state doesn't like jump in and squash them, which, unfortunately they do. But like, for the neighbors who maybe can't travel that far, this is a great thing for the neighborhood. And they're able to like access these goods and services that might be more difficult to drive 20-30 minutes to, if they lack other means of transportation, and they just need like, a vacuum repaired or a sewing machine repaired or something like that.
yeah. Look, Kevin, it's kind of happening in cities. I've been hearing stories about black market electrical bicycle repair. It's a pretty good one, right? Like these guys are fixing them in their living rooms and stuff like that. There is some concern that they're not completely aware of the hazards, but they are. Like there are these little black market bicycle repair shops. We should have never zoned out of having your neighborhood mechanic, because if that dude's making a mess and you see it, you get to stop them,
Yeah.
right? You get to provide them instant feedback. And,
Yeah,
and
so
so,
luckily I do still have a neighborhood mechanic. He's great. Like,
yeah,
he
you're
tried to
welcome.
open up a place in that garage and had some trouble with it, but good folks down the street from me, that I can like walk 3 minutes to and drop my car off. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That is fantastic. You're lucky. In my area, we zoned them out of existence, and the ones that stayed in business basically survived until the owner gave it up, right? And then they can't redo them. So it's all right. So zoning is a problem. It contributes also to the homelessness situation where people can't just rent out rooms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um,
It-
and we've
well,
talked about that almost too much, like I feel like, but I do
yeah.
want to always bring it up. Like having people rent out their properties, rent out bedrooms in their houses and stuff like that is generally a good thing for the community. It may be a bad thing for the landlord because the laws right now are biased. And the people that are still just renting out rooms now are kind of psychopaths. So what we need is a freer market in it, right? Because then nicer people, if they have less fear, will rent out rooms. Like that's a real thing that we've created with our systems of control.
It should be easier right now, like, because it used to be a lot easier to just like take in borders, right? Like that's what they
Mhm.
used to call it, and now it's a lot more difficult. There's a lot more red tape in the way of being able to do that, to make these arrangements that might make sense, to bring in a little bit of income for the homeowner, and for someone who might be just getting started or getting back on their feet, or maybe they would be homeless without some of these options, like to be able to rent out a single room for relatively low price. Um, and there used to be, again, boarding houses with shared spaces. And I know that's not ideal, right? Like, I know that's like, when people think, oh, you're gonna have a whole bunch of people in one house sharing like a single kitchen, and like, well, yeah, like if the alternative is they're gonna be out in my street corner pooping on the sidewalk, yes, that is much better. That is way better than freezing on the streets of Rochester and making a mess.
If they aren't hurting me and taking my stuff, it's ideal. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it can be ideal. It's ideal for the people that own the house. It's ideal for people that need a room, and that's it. You know?
Yeah. And so that's like those are the type of things. And all you have to do, again, all you have to do is just like let people do the things that like they are looking to do anyway. They have these mutually beneficial transactions. here's someone who has an empty room and they want to like do something with it. Here's someone who needs a room to stay in and they don't have much money to do with it. Let them voluntarily interact with each other to make that arrangement and make it work. And make it like easier to do so. Like there should be like really simple, straightforward ways to like do that. And I get like you got to, have some sort of like, contract in place in some of these things, but like
Sure.
fine, then write it up. There's like standard ways to be able to do that now, that are pretty straightforward. And if you don't, go too far in the direction of like protecting tenant rights to the extreme detriment of the landlord, then you can have some protections in place for both sides.
Yeah. It would be so much better. And again, we're solving a problem or contributing to solving a problem with the concept of freedom and a concept of respecting our neighbors. And that, guys, is something that we're missing in society right now.
Yeah, 100%. So, all right, folks, I promise we're not going to spend the entire hour talking about just zoning, because Tim, we've spent a lot of shows talking about this. Like I'll just go on a rant. We both go on tears. We'd even talk about the short-term rental stuff. Like we could go down the short-term rental rabbit hole, the hotel. We're not going to do that because we want to make this again a full show of different types of solutions. And folks who are listening live, throw your suggestions out there. We might get to some of them during the break. We might get to some of it during a show. Dude, just we'd love to hear from you. But we're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to talk about we'll talk about immigration. We'll talk about trade. We'll talk about FDA regulations. Maybe if we're feeling wild, we'll go to like monetary policy stuff. I don't know. We'll see. But we do want to hear from you because the goal of this show is to just get folks thinking about like what are the opportunities out there that we could seize right now. What are the things that we can do, and then what are our long-term goals for like how do we create a free and more just society? Tim, anything to add to that?
No, that was beautiful, Kevin. That's our aim for the show tonight. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna head to break in just a second. Make sure you keep listening here on WYSL. We're gonna be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, I hope I was clear. It's like there are people that want to do it, but they're afraid that they won't be able to get rid of bad people. And there's restrictions against it. Like there's lots and lots of restrictions against it. And you can have like the way society's set up now is there's a distinct lack of freedom when it comes to it. You could get a tenant that complains, and then all of a sudden you have 50 million problems, even though they kind of agreed to it. But it's not for everybody. That's for sure, John. Like I'm not trying to force people into it. I'm just saying, little old lady takes a boarder in, if she can get rid of them rapidly, she's safe. You know what I mean? And she can put a little supplement her income that's being crushed by inflation.
Yeah, and that's the important thing. Like any relationship between like voluntary relationship with individuals needs to have like that voluntary exit clause, right? Like both people need to be able to end that relationship,
right?
And they have protections. Again, if the tenant isn't paying, okay, there needs to be a way to like relatively quickly remove that tenant from the household, right? If the landlord, the person doing the renting out the room just like throws all your stuff out into the street, okay, there needs to be some protection there too, right? Which is stuff I've seen happen, that like some landlords are nuts. They won't maintain the property that like they're renting. They'll still demand rents even when like there's no like water working. I've heard of things like that, or there's like holes in the property, or they'll just randomly walk into the apartment. Like, yeah, okay. Yeah, that stuff, I get it. Like, there needs to be protections there, but we can simplify the process that we have now and not have it skewed so much, and to make it like just a little bit easier for people to be able to take on these things and to solve the problems that we have.
Yep. And another one too, Kevin, that zoning directly impacts. A lot of people are hot for these tiny houses, right? They just want to build a little like shed with a shower and a bed and maybe a little like electric stove. those things are basically illegal, man. Like the
Yeah.
the government in Otsego County built 6 of them. I don't think anybody's ever stated them. They put them right next to the jail. It was wild. Like they had to, like, who else is going to write them zoning variations besides themselves, right? To have tiny houses. So I don't know. It's like kind of silly. People want them for themselves. The government provided them for out in the middle of nowhere too. Like there's no buses that go there. I don't know. Like what are they thinking?
Yeah, right.
Oh, maybe buses do go there. Probably buses do go there, but still, it was weird.
Yeah, I'll get to a couple more of these and we'll go back. You know, Sam says Karen's gonna NIMBY. That's kind of what it is.
Karens.
Yeah. Facebook users, they want big corporations. I mean, maybe like again, intentionally or not, that's the policy they get, right?
Mhm.
You know, that's how you end up concentrating wealth, because you make it impossible for other folks.
In the fixed money scenario, right? Like even if I'm like twice as successful as I am right now, or 3 times as successful as I am right now, I'm gonna donate a couple $100 a year, to my favorite politician. It's not going to be multiple thousands of dollars to keep them being able to buy advertising. You know what I'm saying? It's just like that's the incentive right there. They don't care about me because I'm never going to give them a lot of money. And so hence they don't care about my freedom. Those bastards.
That's true. Patricia says, Kevin, you never saw Big Bang Theory. You make a roommate agreement. No, I didn't see Big Bang Theory, but I also was an RA, and I would often like encourage my residents to make roommate agreements with each other because you've got it. Like, legitimately is an important skill to like learn how to live with people, right? Yeah, it's something like college can be helpful with, and like if you're gonna need roommates after college, which I did after college. We were able to get like a nice space because one of my friends is like, I'm moving to Rochester and I need a place to live. And I'm like, all right, let's get a bigger place. And me and my fiance and this guy, we got a massive like apartment where I had a balcony, well, not balcony, what do you call it? Like it had like a spiral staircase and a balcony in my room. It was the coolest apartment I've ever had.
Nice.
But with 3 people living there and my buddy who is like just in like 2 days a week, but we figure out ways to make it work. You got to figure out ways to live with people. And in college, that's a good opportunity to do that. Like, how do you, do the give and take of like, okay, sharing space, cleaning space, respecting privacy, things like that. It's important.
Yeah. Let me put where to go. Hey, my brother's out there. That's cool. Tiny houses built by the government end up costing the same as a regular house. Not in Otsego County, bro. They were like using the maintenance guys to do the spackling, and they were stealing light fixtures from the basement of the building next door. It was wild.
It's one way to do it.
Absolutely wild. Like, I'm not kidding you. They went all out to save money. But, you're
Good
right. It probably still costs the same. And I don't know that they ever got finished. I want to be clear. I went up there one day and like it definitely wasn't done, and this was 2 years into the project, so I don't know.
Wow, but
it was so funny.
All right, we should probably get back. We'll get back to the show, and we'll and we'll talk about some of our next ones. Tim, you're up next. You've got the next solution. Then go after. We'll try to get through these a bit quicker though.
This one's dry, so it'll go fast.
All right. Back in 3, 2. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor. And we're talking about free solutions today.
Absolutely free solutions, Kevin. And this one is going to be a little bit dry. I rate it as a little bit unlikely, but if our elected officials could get a better grasp that inflation, devaluation, and debt, are actually stealing from the American people, that inflation hurts people on a fixed income that they're purporting to care about, that distorting markets, like we were talking about last show, by enhancing demand and contracting supply, we create market distortions. If with a little bit of education and a little bit of thought, I think that these people could come up with some better solutions, a better fiscal policy, less deficit spending, less devaluation of the currency. And look, like maybe we don't like fractional reserve banking, but right now we have a system where the government just prints money, hands it to banks, and banks hand it to like big, huge businesses. It doesn't work very well. Like we can all feel the effects. We can see it in the grocery store. We can
Yeah.
see it in home prices. We can see it in our tax rates. Like it's everywhere. It's pervasive and it permeates every layer of society. So a little education and a little common sense instead of virtue signaling, people could get back on track with that. What do you think? Am I crazy? Will these people ever stop throwing our money in a toilet?
Tim, I think you may have hit upon the most unrealistic goal that
Damn it.
politicians are going to be responsible with our money. No, it's like you're right. This is what should happen, right? Like what should happen is they should say, okay, we did see a big round of inflation in like the last couple of years. Now they're going to say like, well, calm down, it's fine, don't worry about it. But like we did see that is a preview of what could be coming for us more in the future as spending fails to get under control and our debt continues to rise and our ratio of spending to GDP continues to get further and further out of whack. And suddenly like the pain that like people experienced in 2023 and 2022 from inflation, especially is going to be nothing compared to what could be out there in the future. And so, yes, they should do that. Again, they should just like scale back to like, okay, let's figure out how to pay for this stuff. Let's figure out when the economy is good, how do we make sure that like we're at least like paying down the debt a little bit? That's how our country worked for a good chunk of our history. They just got to get back to that basic responsibility.
Look, Kevin, one of the things that prevents it, I want to be clear, like Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton came up with a balanced budget act in 1992. They actually balanced the budget. And because we rely on imaginary numbers, because this metric of GDP that we calculate relies on inflation and relies on devaluation of the dollar, a balanced budget made it look like we went into a big recession. Okay. And I'm not sure that we did. Things still seemed pretty good. It was nothing like the recession of 2008. It was nothing like the 1970s. Things slowed down, like because of the metrics of the numbers that they were using. Right, our GDP is artificially propped up through inflation. Like that number grows bigger, faster because of this inflationary environment that's created by the government. Does
Number
that
goes up?
does
That
that
must
make
be
sense?
good.
Could I offer these guys a class? Like, would they understand it? Like, do some little like charts and stuff?
Many have tried. Fortunately, it hasn't quite stuck yet. No, that's a great one. I would love for there to just be a smidgen, just a little tiny bit of responsibility on this front, but especially as a bigger and bigger share of the money the U.S. government spends every year is now just going to servicing debt, right? Like it's just going towards that. We're taking a big chunk of our money and just paying for the debt.
It's wild.
Instead of like, again, instead of it going either staying in our pockets or going towards things that like are actually useful and essential functions of the U.S. government, which should be far more limited than what we have now. But now it's just, okay, do we need to pay for student loans? Do we need to pay for, wars overseas? Do we need to pay for
Retirement
random
plans for
studies?
people in a war overseas. Like, do we have to pay for that? You know what I mean? Like the things we're paying for are wild.
Yeah. So there's so much out there. No, we could do that, and like it's difficult. People are going to be disappointed, but like if anyone's ever worked in a job where like you have to make decisions about hard costs, you have to be a grown up and say no sometimes. That's what it is. Like as part of my job, sometimes my job is like saying no to people, like, and that stinks. That's no fun, but like that's part of being a grown up. And I expect the same of our politicians. Yeah. Sometimes you got to say no. Nope. We don't have the money for this. I'm really sorry, but we don't have money for it. Sorry. Maybe next year. or never, depending on how dumb it is. There's a lot. We should have a lot more nevers in those conversations, but here we are.
All right, so it's your turn.
Yes,
you're
turn.
more pragmatic than I think you're going to probably wow everybody with some sort of, maybe I'll call my guy about this tomorrow.
Well, that's what I'm hoping. But actually, here's one that's on my mind because we had a shortage not too long ago, and it's about FDA regulations on like a handful of goods. But specifically, I'm having a baby in March, and baby formula. So remember when we had that baby formula shortage not too long ago, and it was because we've regulated baby formula to the point where only a couple of companies produce all the baby formula in the United States. And so when something goes wrong with one of them, like it is a massive, serious disruption to the supply chain that is a legitimate threat to the health of children because it's so fragile. And then we can't import baby formula in from Europe because it's regulated differently. So they don't want to go through the extreme expense and rigmarole and tariffs of complying with all of our stuff and then shipping it over because it wouldn't be competitive. It would just be too expensive on the shelves after the tariffs and the regulations. But they have their own regulatory body to like take care of this stuff, to make sure that this stuff is safe. We could just lean on that and import European formula. And then that lowers the pressure if something goes wrong in the American supply chain.
Sure, Kevin, but without regulations like that, who would be able to mobilize the U.S. Air Force to fly to Europe and load up a plane full of baby formula, land it on a tarmac in upstate New York, and get several hundred pictures of the government delivering baby formula?
The Biden administration loses a press opportunity, and some Democratic senators lose press opportunities to get a few days worth of formula. Because again, the logistics of that stuff, like it just that stunt was so infuriatingly useless. Because it didn't it covered like a couple of stores, for goodness sakes. It wasn't that much. I'm like exaggerating slightly, but not by that much. Like it really was not all that substantial of like a gift to the American public.
Bro, it was wild. It was embarrassing. And then at least when AOC saw a subject that hit close to home, she realized that the FDA may not always be our friend.
That's right. With sunscreen. Yeah. She was right. We should legalize Korean sunscreens. We should. Like she is right about that one. Like apply it to other things, especially baby formula, but like other things generally, like those products are fine. Let's just make it easy to import them. Like again, this is like my realistic solution, not like abolish the FDA, just like make bilateral agreements with these other countries like that we trust to like regulate things like formula or sunscreen or food, like in a similar enough way where it's fine, right?
Yeah, I mean, DeSantis went abroad to get some of those, I don't know, like some COVID medicine. What the heck were? Anyway, he went abroad to circumvent the FDA to bring in an emergency supply of, I think it was remdesivir or something like that. So it's possible for us to contravene these regulations in times of crisis, like the Jones Act. Every time we have a crisis, like a national disaster, we suspend the Jones Act so that shipping gets cheaper. So
that was going to be one of my next ones.
No,
it's okay. It's okay. You brought it up, but you're right. Like because we sort of did that a little bit with the formula when we're importing formula, and then like we do that with the Jones Act constantly. And remember what the Jones Act says is that basically you have to have a ship that was built in America, crewed by Americans, with an American flag on it, crude built. And that's the only way you can ship stuff from one U.S. port to another U.S. port. Right. And this whole thing was designed to protect the U.S. shipping industry, which basically died not too long after the Jones Act anyway. They're being outcompeted by other places. So you can have a foreign crude and flagship go into, a port in Miami and ship stuff to the Bahamas, but you can't have something from Miami go to Puerto Rico. So you get these weird arrangements where you have to ship stuff to like a third destination, either somewhere else in the Caribbean before you can go to Puerto Rico, or you have to go up to like Canada, and like all this weird stuff happens where we add extra expense and time. And sometimes when in cases of like hurricanes, like it ends up being like a life or death situation where we can't just have foreign ships who are in port, who are willing and able and ready to deliver goods to like hurricane ravaged Puerto Rico. No, we can't do that. They have to go somewhere else first. It's so ridiculous, and it kills people.
It literally kills people. And guys, look, I did a show with Colin Grabo of the Cato Institute, and we got down and dirty on the whole subject of how things that are shipped from California to Alaska cost multiple times what they should because of the Jones Act. Okay, they have to go from a port in California with an American flag ship, with an American crude ship, with an American built ship, and that's the only way they can be shipped from California to Alaska and vice versa. So things that come back down from Alaska to the main states are also under this obscene price pressure, which, guys, I'm going to say something that you might think is weird, but it fills Lisa Murkowski's campaign coffer. Okay, like that's what happened. She went in and shook down Trump. Trump was going to get rid of the Jones Act. She went in, shook him down, gave him a bag of cash, and he kept the Jones Act. I mean,
and you know what's weird about that too is the people of Alaska hate the Jones Act. It polls very, very poorly there. But like the members of Congress, the senators, and the House of Representative person, like they just keep supporting it for some reason.
For some reason, I think I might have hit the nail on the head with the reason, but that was purely conjecture and part of a good time show. Like,
that's part of it. But yeah, places like Alaska, places like Hawaii, places like Puerto Rico, anywhere where again there's not many Jones Act like compliant vessels. There's only 56 tankers and 23 container ships. And so something like shipping natural gas from New York or Pennsylvania up to Maine, you can't do it too. Like it's so it's not even just like the places that are away from the mainland. It's also like, hey, we have this like easy and convenient way of shipping liquefied natural gas like across oceans. We send it to Europe all the time, but we can't get it to New England because like there's no effective train route, there's no pipeline, and we can't get a Jones Act compliant ship that can transport liquefied natural gas legally. So, I guess we're just gonna freeze.
And look, based on other regulations in the United States, building a container ship, it costs on an order of magnitude of almost 3 times as much money to build a container ship, a big barge in the United States as it does any place else that builds ships. That's a stat that's hitting me from talking to Colin.
And so like there's
on it.
Yeah, and like it's part of the regulations, as part of like the union stuff, and like again, we're not talking about like, oh, we're gonna build this in some like random country you never heard of. We're talking about places like Korea where it's like a third the cost. So you go over to South Korea and build a container ship that's bigger, better, and cheaper. And so all you gotta do is just say, okay, we're just gonna forget about this. Like, don't even worry about. Sorry, the American shipping industry needs to find new ways to innovate and be the best in the world again, because it was at one point in time the best in the world. If we still want to be, then let's figure out new ways to do it instead of protectionism.
Yeah, it is protectionism. And look, we're the king of clean manufacturing. We're the king of technological advancement. And what stands in the way of us being a manufacturing powerhouse? Like, I know that we still score big numbers in manufacturing, but that's because we do this custom manufacturing. We build planes and we build warships. And like, it's a very interesting thing. We are not a mass producer style manufacturer, even though we have limitless technology and we have the ability to produce things cleaner than anybody else in the world. It seems like there would be a fit there, a way to make it work.
And we should be able to do it. It's just for a lot of complicated reasons, it's expensive to build stuff here. But anyway, we are heading up on break now. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution on WYSL. We have one more segment to go after this. Free solutions for 2024. Talk to you in a few minutes. All right.
Now we're pretty good. We got a
Yeah.
couple little subjects in there.
Oh yeah, we got a couple in there, and actually, I'm gonna throw out another one. I'm not gonna include this in the radio show because it's a bit more timely, but Argentina, our friend Lay down there, just introduced a massive deregulation of the airline industry, and it's sort of related to the Jones Act, which is why I bring it up. He allows foreign airlines to now operate domestically within Argentina. Which is not a thing that is allowed in the U.S. Like, so it has to be if you're doing a domestic flight in the United States, it has to be it's basically similar to the Jones Act rules, where it has to be like an American-owned company, and American crewed. But in Argentina, they're just like, you know what, we want to make it easier for people to fly around Argentina. These foreign companies want to come in, compete, offer domestic flights. Go for it. So
he's facing some pushback already. Some of the workers of Argentina, some of the unions are out protesting against him, and he's actually participating in some union busting and some, like, we'll see how it goes. It's a little bit nerve-wracking.
The union busting?
Yeah. Well, it's a conundrum, right? Because if they're public sector unions, everything in Argentina is very confusing because they are in a train wreck mess of an economy. And I'm afraid that's where it's going to take to get us to realize, oh, hey, libertarians had some good ideas. We should have been listening to them, and we'll listen to them now, like that kind of thing. So I just caught a blurb on Twitter, which is where I go for all of my news, all of it.
Why would you need to go anywhere else?
Yeah, you don't really. I mean, Tucker's there. We're there right now.
Yeah, that's right. It's the only sources you need.
That's right.
No, but yeah, like I know, like there's folks concerned about like union busting and everything, but it's a bit tough, and that's like the conversation that New York State isn't ready for, in terms of like unions that are able to exercise so much power over the people in New York State to be able to extort the state government, to extort the state taxpayers in exchange for subpar services.
Man,
but
wow. You said it. That's right. I mean, you blew me away with that. That was well said.
Yeah. I mean, so you look at like teachers unions and some other public sector unions, they're not asking for a share of the profit. They're asking for a share of the loot, and they're taking, yeah, I know, right? Sounding very libertarian today, but they're taking, like, again, it's not we have made more money, the owners have made more money because we have delivered better value and more people want their services. It's that we have lobbied the government to extract more resources from the state so we can have a bigger share of those resources. Again, that's kind of what it is. I don't like public sector unions. I'm looking forward, if I ever run for office again, this exact clip being played on loop in a commercial.
That would be great. Yeah, that would be good.
But I will.
Millet here for the United States. But it's a big deal. Like what you're saying, public sector unions are asking for a share of the loot. I think that, again, sometimes like
and this isn't anything against like the individual teachers and everything. Like, and y'all
getting fleeced too. They're getting fleeced by these organizations. They're getting shaken down. They have no choices but to participate. Like it's real. Like, I think that there's a lot of pressure, and like you said, they get to exert massive political power. They get to be closed shop oriented. You can't like negotiate your way out of partial payments with them. You're either in it or you're not a teacher. That's it.
Yeah, and can the system of unions or system of guilds, like what used to exist prior to like free markets disrupting everything, just lead to control, subpar services, and like rent-seeking behavior, where customers have few to no options to choose between different alternatives of goods and services in any aspect of their lives. And that's a future that if that is a return to the past, in fact, that if not fought and proactively, like, protected against, we'll end up in that same situation again. And that's where Argentina was. And I get, it seems pretty aggressive to the folks who are looking at what Javier Milei is doing, but like, you sort of have to weed a bit of that out.
I'm sympathetic with the workers because they've been abused for decades, right?
Yeah.
So they're paranoid, they're scared. What little things they have, they feel are being threatened.
Right.
I get it. Give them some time. I
Yeah.
think.
Well, again, it's on him, and it's on also folks like us to say, like, why is the alternative better? Because like in their minds, like, hey, we have a sweet deal, and even if it makes the rest of society worse off, it seems pretty good for them.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we're better off than you are. So like that's sometimes all they can hope for, I guess,
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, there's some interesting, like, what was I listening? I was listening to something where like there's some countries too where like even like union membership is hereditary. So like teachers unions like followed like hereditary.
Oh my God.
Like licensing
No way.
is bizarre. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah,
And drop a link to that. I think
E-
I was
Even
listening.
the socialist loving FDR spoke out against public sector unions. I have some vague this rang a bell in my head. I believe this to be true.
Yeah, I remember that. And look, there's a bunch of other great comments in here. Like we'll probably get to this one from Sean Epstein's
Yeah.
2024. Happy New Year. Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that after Radio Show. I think we're gonna do one more segment where we're just talking about solutions, and then we'll get to some of the current event stuff. So all right. We'll head back in about 15 seconds and wrap up this thing, or at least the WYSL portion of this thing.
All right.
Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim the Freedom Variant O'Connor, and we're continuing to talk about free solutions.
Look, I think this is a platitudinous one, all right? Like even coming from me. And look, maybe I am more platitudinous than you. Maybe I'm the more of the conspiracy theorist, but I think that people can just be like, the world can wake up and say, look, war is bad, trade is good. And I think that Democrats and Republicans could both come to an agreement that no matter what, that constant talk of warmongering does not serve peace, does not serve innocent civilians, and does not serve the people behind theocratic regimes, dictatorships, and this constant beating the drums of war that have been going on for the last couple of years because of the government's response to COVID and inflation and the poverty that it racked up throughout the world. We had to beat the drum for war. And I know that's like, all right, Tim, take it easy. But still, listen to me. If people can just say, hey, violence is bad, trade is good, let's figure a way out of all of this stuff. I think that would be a better precept with which to govern. I don't know. What do you think, Kevin?
I mean, I generally agree with you. I think that one it's going to be tough right now. Again, there's
a couple tough ones, don't I?
Yeah, no, like we're going to be we are, for whatever reason, in a moment where there's an appetite once again for more aggressive involvement abroad. We'll see what the rest of 2024 brings us. But there's definitely a lot of, we need to jump in to protect the interests of America that are in, Ukraine, Israel, Yemen, wherever, right?
Sure.
And that in order to protect the liberal order, to protect trade, that we need to be aggressive, right?
Yeah.
Like specifically like the Red Sea conflict going on right now, they're saying, well, people can't trade there right now. People can't ship because the Houthis. So America's military, our Navy comes in, they're protecting the ships so trade can exist.
Which is, as a former neocon, is still an argument that's persuasive, even though I am anti-war, right? I recognize that there's a certain pragmatic need for an amount of violence in our society. Okay, like I recognize, and I find it to be unfortunate. So
I want to dismiss your point though. Like we do, like America has like a big role in preventing conflict, but also like part of that role in preventing conflict is seeking peace and not seeking opportunities to perpetuate conflict. And unfortunately,
we
the
seem
US
to vote on half of that.
Yeah, we've kind of missed half the equation on that one. And so that's unfortunate. Like I'd love to see more of that. And it's going to be tougher. We'll see how it is. Like other than like losing the appetite for funding, maybe, or like what they're doing. Yeah, what they're doing is they're tying it to other policy priorities in theory, like immigration reform, which I also do want to talk about as well, because I think there's some like pretty straightforward things that like we could do on immigration, which is that like, okay, things do feel chaotic right now, right? Like things do feel chaotic. They have for a while in terms of a bunch of people want to be here, which I get. This place is a cool place. America's a cool place to be. There's a lot of opportunities here, especially relative to many other countries. Again, we'll see how things shake out, and like maybe in Argentina, like a bunch of the Latin American migrants are going to go there instead if Javier Milei ends up taking off. But a lot of people still want to come to the United States, still land of opportunity. Okay, so what do we do with that, right? How do we make a process where there isn't a lot of incentive for people to cross the border illegally to just, because right now the process looks like, okay, you could sit in your home country and try to find a way in and take years and thousands of dollars to apply, all of which time you're living in poverty, missing opportunities, and maybe your life is threatened.
Yeah.
Or you can just come here right now, ask for asylum, and then like, make it through the process. Okay. Yeah. A lot of people are like, nope, I want my life to be better right now. And they do it. So, okay, how do we fix that? How do we address that? Well, a couple things. One is we just have visa reform, right? We make it easier for U.S. companies to hire people who want to work. There's places like chip manufacturing has run into a big snag right now because they can't hire enough people. Even though we had the CHIPS Act, we subsidized the absolute heck out of like trying to reshore microchip development here in the United States. They can't hire enough people to do it, even though there are workers all over the world who have training to do this. They have the ability to do it, and they want to come here to work and live, but we can't get the people over here.
Yeah.
And again, there's just like not enough U.S. workers who are willing and able to do that. Why not just import them? Just bring people in, make that simple, make the skilled like labor immigration side easier. And for folks who like maybe don't have a bunch of skills, again, just simplify the process. Just make it like right now, it's so Byzantine. It's so complicated that there's a lot of incentives for people to do things outside of the system. If you make it simple checkpoint, simple like thing where you're able to go in, immediately start working, have your case like heard relatively quickly, and then get a decision. Because right now, the other part is that there aren't enough immigration judges. So cases end up taking a long time. So people are just kind of hanging out. And it's not really clear that they can work in that time.
Yeah.
So again,
immigration lawyers love the system the way that it is. This adversarial immigration process. They make millions off of it. They fleece these kids, and it's ridiculous. I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to take it like when we get into the agricultural visa system, like, yeah, you can get here on an agricultural visa, but that, like, first of all, the life is hard. The issue, one of the big issues that we could fix for people that would come here to work in agriculture is to not make their visa immediately suspendable by some bitter guy. If a little Mexican dude or a Venezuelan comes here and wants to work on a farm, they should be able to stay and get another job. They can immediately become an illegal immigrant at the whims of the person that brought them here and hired them. That's a real problem. That's a real danger. And these are people that came here to work on farms. So we can fix that, right? Like everybody could agree that we want them here. We already issued those visas. the people that come here should be able to stay here and get another job, even if they don't get along with their boss.
Right.
They don't
It
need to
should be-
become an illegal alien because of the whims of somebody that,
because it ends up creating other problems, right? Because that's when you get you increase the illegal immigrant population by doing this, by not making it easier for someone to either leave a job relatively easily, or if they get fired, to find within a reasonable period of time other like gainful employment. So like, you can make the system less chaotic. You can make it so that people are less dependent on welfare by just making it simpler, speeding up the process, and making it so that people can immediately go to work and then find new opportunities to work and advance themselves. And that would solve most of the problem. Now, there's still going to be some problems with people running drugs. There's going to be some problems with some people are still going to go around system, but you're going to reduce the scope of that problem pretty significantly. And then actual border resources can be focused on like the actual people who are coming here with ill intent, of which there are some, right? Like, by ill intent, I mean like the war on drugs, but we could talk about that too.
No, look, the war on drugs would be a great one to resolve, right? I think that would, if you wanted to go down that road, I would get the opportunity to be like, Kevin, I just don't think that's going to work. They're going to keep funneling money into militaristic operations that destroy economies and enhance black markets. So like they like doing it. They're confused about it.
That's if I had to pick one, that's my unrealistic policy, is just like to totally end the war on drugs. But I know, like, man, look at how we're struggling to even like follow through on like marijuana legalization.
And I laugh. I'm sorry, I laugh. We've blown it. We've blown it.
Yeah.
In New York, anyway. I don't know if it's better.
So some other places they've done a little bit better by it, but like not definitely New York and California have botched it, and just made it so that like black markets can still thrive. And again, there are problems there created by black markets in drugs and immigration and in other things, and you can resolve a lot of those problems with freedom by just making it easier to operate in legal spaces. That's the whole thing. Like with immigration, with the war on drugs, with sex work as well. Like you can just say, okay, there are some problems associated with those activities. I get it, but wouldn't it be better if the problems associated with those activities were hashed out in courts rather than with couriers and with gun battles and with pimps? Like depending on which aspect. There are better ways to be able to resolve that, and we can minimize the harm through legalization.
Yeah. Shelley brings up an issue out there that basically racial profiling. Her sister is adopted and a Native American. She lives in Texas and is constantly asked for a green card. Hey, we're in a major quandary in our society. Shelley's sister, a Native American, put in the crosshairs of interacting with the police constantly. I don't know what the right answer is. I don't like how we're handling any of it. And so I think a lot of people agree that we don't like the way it's being handled. We have incentivized immigration. We have human rights violations when people are getting visas. Like, how can we not apply some common sense and some compassion to this situation and fix it? And how can Democrats and Republicans continue to preserve this issue to manipulate the people of the United States of America, Kevin? That's they manipulate us. They've been doing it for years, and they need to do better. So let's put this onus, like this is a demand, right, from the libertarians. Let's put this onus on them to do a better job of handling this situation. They're embarrassing us to the world. How's that sound?
That would be great. Love to see it. We'll see if they heed your call, Tim.
They should.
They should.
I demand they comply.
Yeah. All right. What do we have time for any more? I mean, we have like 2 minutes left.
2 minutes left. All right.
Lightning round. Let's go.
I mean, I got yeah, free trade, sound monetary policy, privacy protection. The one I wanted your take on is decentralization. What do you think about that? That's a big buzzword. Even Russell Brand is talking about it. Like, it seems as though it could be a panacea, Kevin. And yet,
sometimes it depends on what it is, right? Like, by some decentralization, like, because like we talked about in the past, like COVID policy and how there were like single points of failure that made responding to a pandemic less successful, right? We talked about that in the past.
We did
that. Like, I'm in favor of that type of decentralization. Sometimes people mean by decentralization is they mean local control, and they really do mean local control. And they just mean like bringing tyranny back home.
Like local tyrant. Yeah, no.
Yeah, so like you have your town board that's out of control. That I'm not for that. Decentralization for its own sake isn't necessarily panacea, although it can be helpful in a lot of circumstances.
I do think that there's the Article 9 of New York State Constitution that would allow a certain amount of home rule and a certain rejection of authoritarian edicts handed down by the state. And I certainly would like to see more counties experiment with enforcing that. Now, I know that there's a downside to it. And I know that they will find ways to take money that they're giving you once you take a stand against them. So there's a real concern there. But it still would be nice to see.
Be interesting. All right. Couple other ones from me. Ranked choice voting. Love to see that. And I think that one's realistic too. We've talked about like insurance reform related to police use of force incidents.
Mm-hmm.
Make insurance mandatory for them, and then just lowering taxes. It's just keep doing that. Just lower some taxes. All right. So we are out of time for the WYSL show. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're gonna keep going online, but have a great night, folks. Have a great 2024. Take care. All right.
Yeah, nicely done. So I think the first thing we should talk about in the bonus show is the Epstein flight list.
Epstein thing. Okay. I was wondering. I was like, you're gonna pull up Sean's comment on Epstein flight list 2020. Okay, so give some context. What's the news on that?
So basically, they are going to be releasing the Epstein's flight list now. So there's some confusion about whether it's like, are you on a flight with him, or you're flying with it on his private jet, or are you going to his island? So once the names come out, we're going to at least have an obligation as a society to delineate that reality, right? Because, like, for example, RFK is like, hey, yeah, once these names get released, I'm one of them. You know what I mean? He's like, me and my wife and my family flew from, some point in Texas to some point in New York, and we were hitting them up for money for the Kennedy Foundation. You know what I mean? So,
well, at least he's upfront about it, I suppose.
It's like he better get it in front of. But there is going to be people that went to his island, right, on his flight list, on his flight logs, and
yeah,
I think that's going to be interesting because we saw high level like cover-ups about, I want to say there was a guy in the Trump administration that had officially covered up a case and said, yeah, no, that's what I was supposed to do, kind of thing. And then he resigned. And I wish I could remember the details of it because it was really sketchy. He was just like, yeah, I did that, and I felt like I was supposed to.
Oh, I don't remember which thing you're talking about, but
I know I'm horrible like that. I'm getting just a little tiny blurb of it right now.
It's all right, but well, maybe we can find some time to talk about it in a future show. But
Sean would be, know.
Yeah, I know. I know he's been monitoring this stuff. Sean's got his own podcast and has been monitoring this, talking about it.
And politics.
Yep.
He's back at it. He took a little layoff, but he's back at it. He's been making shows. So
but get the notifications of the shows happening.
Sean's show, it's great. I generally check it out once in a while. Well, actually, I generally check out every episode. you know, him and his buddy Ben Husong do a nice job. Talk a little sports, make fun of the government. I love that.
Yeah, but yeah, you know, I'll say this, Tim. You know, I told you the legal system was eventually going to come through. That
Ooh.
eventually they were gonna like clear through all the things, because there's a lot of people who are like they're putting in FOIA requests and doing all that. Like we that needed to be resolved eventually, right?
Sure.
And I figured, even though the way I thought it was going to be resolved was they were going to build cases, right?
Yeah.
But so far it doesn't look like there's enough there to. I mean, maybe we'll see how things go, but thought they'd be building cases against folks. But at least we're going to get some information about like who was hanging out with this dude.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be.
Let me ask you this, right? Is going to Epstein Island a conviction? Like, can we just convict that person in the court of public opinion, be it Trump or Biden or whomever, right? Can do we know they engaged in horrible activity? We don't, right?
No, you don't, right? And that's you're saying this because RFK is involved now, right? You got
yeah,
guy.
yeah. I'm all about defending him.
No, I mean we don't, but I think it's worth asking like questions to these folks, like, hey, you hung out with this guy 15 times. Why? You know?
Yeah, no, I would love it if it does create a major shakeup and we do lose. You know, we get some dirt on some big names. I think all of those things would be good, but without an accusation from a victim,
yeah,
I'm not sure how far it should go. And that's a real problem because that's our system and our system has value.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing, right? Like we can't
Yeah.
just like, you know, jail people over accusations. That there has to be evidence. And just associating with the guy as skeevy as and awful as Mr. Epstein was,
Yeah.
that's not necessarily illegal, and not everyone hanging out with him was doing anything nefarious. There are many people who were just asking him for money. You know,
Sure. And look, if
a
it
rich
cost you
dude.
an election for having hung out with him 20 years ago, that's too bad. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe you didn't do anything wrong, but you know what? Too bad. That's it. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with that.
I'm not going to lose any sleep over that.
No, it'd be all right. I mean, honestly, if any of our Congress critters or our senators actually lost an election after being elected, I'm fine with that. Don't
generally
like, lose. That's a term limit was imposed by your constituency. See you later.
Yeah. What's some of the other stuff that we missed? Let's see. Shelley had this interesting comment too. Said we know that we're not the only country on the planet with immigration problems, right?
Yeah.
Germany, the UK, and Mexico have issues, just to name a few. Well, Mexico. Well, I'll start backwards. Mexico is interesting in the fact that a lot of their immigration problems are in part caused by the United States. Because we require people to wait in a third country to, before while their asylum case is being decided. So a lot of the immigration in Mexico, where they're having like a bunch of immigrants pile up from like other countries or traveling through Mexico, they're trying to get to the United States, and they're forced to stay there by the United States. So like, yeah, Mexico like has kind of an issue, but it's pretty directly caused by U.S. policy.
Yeah. What if less people wanted to come here like that? You know, how would we fix that?
Yeah, it's. I mean, like they do have some people who want to go there, but like a lot of the folks who are just kind of hanging out are waiting to get to the U.S. or traveling through Mexico to get to the U.S. And that's creating some issues. Germany and the UK. Yeah, Germany has. I mean, like several European countries have like an interesting problem where they needed laborers, they needed people to come in. They really fundamentally view immigrants differently in places like Germany. It's their national sense of identity is far more blood related in Germany specifically than the United States. I said it was interesting being a student there because they like made very clear that like we would never be German. like you're students, and you're here visiting, and when you're done visiting, you will go, and you will never be German. And all the Turkish people, some of whom are on third or fourth generation, they're like, you will never ever be German. Like, look at you, you're not
Yeah,
German. You can't be German.
that attitude didn't at all turn out badly for the Germans. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, maybe they should let go of that. I don't know.
Yeah, but like it's like a lot of European countries, like where their national identity was built out of like culture and in some case like race, like they just they see it a bit differently. So like the number of immigrants that they have, and they also create like the problems that we have with immigrants in terms of like not allowing them to work are way worse in a lot of these European countries too, because they're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, we have these generous welfare benefits, and also as an immigrant we don't want you taking our country's jobs, so like you're just going to live here on benefits like forever. And then there's a bunch of like bored people hanging out.
It's not a
It
recipe
creates
for
problems.
disaster, black markets, violence. It's not a recipe for any of that, you know?
Yeah. And then the UK responded to their immigration problem by like removing themselves from the European Union, which has had, like they've got the benefit. I would say they didn't really benefit from like removing the regulations because they just imposed them on themselves anyway. And that they
Right.
just wanted to cut themselves off from immigrants, and that's creating other issues in
Sure.
addition to the travel issues they faced. But yeah, like they've had some of that too. But again, like immigration is far more racialized in Europe than it is in the United States. Like when people talk about like immigration as like a racial discussion in the US, it's like not even close to what's going on in Europe. Like the way like the French think of like Africans, even in their former colonized states, are it's different.
So we've got that going for us too. Then
Yeah.
really, I do. We are preaching a kinder, gentler kind of society. I think that for libertarianism to be successful, we do kind of need to be cooler to everybody. Like that's a reality. So
Yeah.
we're steps ahead on that.
Yeah, no, man, and you threw that thing out in the beginning where, like, you talked about like freedom is like moving away from the identity politics. Like, I think that's really important too. Like, I think it's like foundational to a free society. Like, you don't have to like necessarily treat someone equally if they're being a jerk, but like
Right.
foundationally, everyone has the same rights. We're all human, and like starting out with that is leaps and bounds ahead of what most of the human race has been throughout like the entirety of its existence.
Back in the 70s, Kevin, we used to talk about the United States as the great melting pot, and we all regulate it. And I don't know that the conversations have gone away, but we used to talk about like I'm part Irish, I'm part Italian, I'm part Welsh. I have like that was everybody would compare their lineage in with a sense of pride of how many different things they could say. Like I'm German and English and Italian, like it was interesting because it was a very positive vibe. Like,
Yeah.
we had the black kid that said he was like Haitian, but he was also like half, like we had a pretty cool neighborhood and it was very multicultural, even in little Oneonta, New York. And it's sad to see Oneonta, New York shrinking and less families intermingling,
Yeah.
less families to intermingle. Let's be real about that, with
Right.
less kids, less everything.
But yeah, that essentialization of like racial identity or national heritage, which actually I tweeted out this thing of I think it was over the weekend, about fusion Ethiopian Texas barbecue.
I saw that. I saw that.
So
I
like
watched
something like that's awesome. Like it like there's so many places where like that is like taboo, and like only in the United States where there's a market opportunity for this like unique fusion and blend of things. And I know there are some folks out there who like would probably accuse that like thing of being cultural appropriation somehow, even though I have no idea what the owner's like heritage is at all, but like who
He's
kind of
Irish. It sounds like something an Irish guy would do.
yeah, right. I mean, like I'm saying, like it was a big discussion in Rochester. Like there was like I think they're Irish. Like, there's a family that started up like an Indian food place because they were like inspired by their trip to Asia. But like to me, I'm like, all right, well, like it's interesting that like you're blending your own traditions with like what you've experienced, and like if they deliver good food, like to me, like I'm fine with that. And that celebration of like different ideas, different foods, different like cultures is a good thing. And I know there's some people who want to keep that distinct and separate, and to have people only focus on like cultures that are specific to their like heritage, and by heritage I mean like specifically like their DNA.
Yeah, I don't like that.
No, yeah, but because part of what has made America cool is like adopting and mixing and frankly profiting off of like the different like blends of cultures that have come here to like make a living.
Yeah. Yeah, that is one of the things that made it cool. Like I'm 4 generations off the boat, right? Off the Italian boats and off the Irish boats. Like the O'Connors and the Lanzas have not been in this country for hundreds of years. We came here for opportunity and we're making the best of it that we absolutely can, like we're all of us ended up like me and my younger cousin are the kids that went to and my younger cousins, we all went to college. We were like the first kids that I was the first because I'm the oldest, right?
Right.
We actually went to higher education. It was a big deal for our family, and that probably wouldn't have happened in Ireland or Italy. You know what I mean? We were just whatever caste system they have there. That's who we were.
Yeah. Right.
Shelly says everyone assumes you're German. Shelly, I assumed you were Irish. Shelly sounds Irish to me. You look Irish the time we met. I don't know this German
Schultz.
thing.
I mean, Schultz, I could, I could see that.
That's a married name. That's what I figured.
What 1/8 German. I mean, people say that about my first name. They're like, "Oh, Kevin, that's an Irish name." I'm not at all Irish. It's just
you're not. You named your kid Seamus.
Yeah, I know. But my wife is very Irish. Like her
of that, son.
Yeah, I know. I am appropriating, but my wife is Irish. Well, her grandfather is like from Ireland.
Fair enough. I'll allow it.
Yeah,
that's how the Irish are.
Yeah. But yeah, me not at all. Like I'm, like it's a little bit confusing. Like I've never done like DNA tests, nor have I like actually bothered to check like the family history. But like supposedly, like family names like Siegfried. Okay, so like that's like way Western Germany, like before Germany was really a thing, and Polish and possibly English. That's what my family said anyway, but I have no idea. Possibly Native American, because like like this person, she was from like the Ariska tribe. All right, well, I don't know. I have nothing to verify that, but like I have photos of someone.
I mean, you can run with that. You know what I mean? Like you can just lean into that.
Elizabeth Warren certainly did. Why not me?
Thank you.
Yeah,
right with my lead. Took my lead.
Yeah, well, because I have no idea. Like, I don't like go around like claiming it, but other than the fact that my family's like, okay, yeah, like here's your like great grandmother here, and like she was supposedly like, Native American. Okay, sure, like it's, but in that area, like there's a lot of like kind of, people who are just kind of intermingled in Utica, Rome area.
Yeah, lots of Irish, lots of Italian, lots of melting pot action going on there for sure.
Yeah. But as far as I'm aware, though, I'm not at all Irish. I've not heard that one pop up. Not at all Italian. Never heard that one pop up. I've heard Polish, English, German. German makes sense. There's Siegfrieds and Hollenbecks in my family.
Yeah.
But that's all I know.
Yeah, my dad's from Rome, New York. So that Utica, Rome area. So
yeah,
there were some Irish, definitely some Italians.
Yeah, no, they're there. I know they're there. Just as far as I know, and I don't know if I ever want to like take one of those DNA tests, because as interesting as it sounds, it also sort of creeps me out.
Well, I took one, and like now that I've become a private, privacy expert, I'm like, what the heck was I thinking? What was I thinking? But I have nothing to fear because I've done nothing wrong.
The government has all your DNA samples now.
I know. It is kind of creepy.
Yeah.
Should we talk about Governor Hochul at all? This
maybe.
Which
thing?
Not a bad subject for a regular show, though.
Yeah, maybe we wait till next week. We got two issues that we wanted to talk about, which we could probably spend a ton of time on. One's the moving local elections to even years.
Yeah.
So they'll be the same as like presidential and gubernatorial years. And a bill on non-compete agreements.
Yeah.
She vetoed a bill that would have banned non-compete agreements.
Yeah. And they kind of did in that article play up the fact that for low wage earners, they've already taken on like Papa John's, right? Like Papa John's with their sandwich monopoly was like forcing low wage earners into non-competitive agreements.
Oh, they did that when I worked at Annie Ann's too.
Oh, did
Annie
they?
Ann's like that, yeah. Like I like, although it was like sort of specific. Like I just couldn't work for like, and this was like never enforceable really, but like I was supposed to like not like work for like other competing pretzel places and bring the the trade secrets over, even though like I was a minimum wage employee at 16 years old.
I gotta think that when I got my first job in a grocery store, there was so much paperwork. I gotta think there was a non-compete clause in there. You know what I mean? I gotta think there was. There was so much stuff. They gave me like an intense psychological battery test of like 400 questions, like, and they paid me $3.35 an hour to take the test. So I was more than happy to, spend 2 hours filling out paperwork, but it was wild.
Yeah. Make you sign your life away.
Yeah.
This place you're not paying attention. But
yeah, for $50 a week or something. It was crazy.
Yeah. Basically nothing, especially if you're younger and you're just not like, you're just like, all right, whatever. Like, let me just get to work.
Yeah. Let me just, can I make money now?
Yeah, right.
I was coming from a farm, right? Like where it was like, I'd work 100 hours a week and get $50. So I'm like, $3.35 an hour, score. And then like after, it was wild, Kevin. And then I think I was part of a union. And after my probationary period, I went from $3.35 to $3.65. And I think when I was done, I was making $3.85 an hour.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Big money.
Yeah.
I mean, back when you could buy a house for a nickel, I assume, but
Well, yeah. And we couldn't afford one even when they were a nickel. So that was wild.
All right. Well, we'll call it a night. We'll save those subjects for another day.
All right.
Thanks everyone for listening. Have a great night, folks. Take care.